First, we need to do two pieces of important framing of this debate. The first one is about the capacity of national health authorities. National health authorities definitely, as the government, has the capacity to rearrange the health resources in order to save people. So their negligence, their ignorance is due to their priorities. For example, they sometimes put the priority of those rich people, of those people who are the family of the government official, to a higher priority than those like underprivileged people. But however, we need to notice they actually have the capacity to do so. A few reasons. First, they have the capacity to have heavier tax on more rich people. They have the capacity to rearrange wealth. They have the capacity to gather more health resources. For example, the healthcare people, the hospitals from other places in order to go to the places that have the strongest infection in order to save people here. They both have this. They have this capacity to do so, and then the reasons why they do not save those people is that they do not put them in a higher priority. Let's take the example of breakdown in China. The reason why there's a lockdown in China during the COVID-19 is that the government say they need to control the infection. However, the infection rate, the death rates in the cities being locked down has increased a lot. But the governments can gather more resources to displace in order to decrease the death rate, but they do not do so. The reason okay.
How's it possible for them to enact like a policy that can solve everything when they just face the issue for the first ever time?
Face the issue for the first ever time. But however, they can gather more resources, as we have already proved you with the structural reasons. They have the ability to arrange more resources to this place. They have the ability to get more officials in that place. For example, they can just gather more officials to that place, or they can have better medicines, better something to improve this healthcare of people during that areas. But they do not do so. The only reason is that they do not put in the better priority. So the first thing we're going to talk about in our arguments is it is principally justified for people to sue the government for their negligence. Is that government actually have the responsibility to help those people. You mentioned that governments actually do not have that capacity, but however, even if the government do not have the capacity, government need to take responsibility. The intuition point for this principal argument is that working by drowning kids as the only one who can swim is that you need to save these kids. You need to be responsible of the death of that kids. As the government is the only one that can rearrange resources and create resources to help these people who are struggling with health issues. And second, government has already made a commitment to its citizens that it will care for all the people. And the reason why the people gave part of the power to the government is to say that the government have made a commitment to help them. It gave the government's duty to care about its person. So if the government fails to care about its citizens, then it is reasonable and is principally justified for the families to sue the government for its negligence. So that is a principal argument. And second thing, practically, the people need to sue the government, sue the healthcare authority for the rearrange of healthcare resources, at least in the next time. So we will prove to you of why the individual can actually win the suit to the government to get the rearrange of health resources. There are several mechanisms. The first one is about the jury, right? The jury is the normal people that they will feel sympathy to the poor people whose family have died. So it will give the chance for the underprivileged individuals to win the jury. And this second mechanism here is about the judge. The judge will align the procedure justice, and they will work by the law, and they will also care about their reputation and their recognition. So they will make justice decisions in order to increase the possibility of the individual winning the rearrange of health resources. And the third thing is about the social movement impacting the jury and more people to sue the healthcare authorities for their negligence. This will also help people to unite together to discussion and to pressure the healthcare authority to make more decisions that will favor the underprivileged individual and their healthcare, to put them in higher priority. And also we got the mechanism for media that will also help the rearrange of healthcare resources. It's the media is not consists all of the like government media. We can also see individuals voicing out their heartbreaking story about their family's deaths. We can see people in a lockdown reporting the real data about the death rates instead of the death rates of that reported by the government. And also we can see the recording and discussion related about the social medias, and people can also feel a sense of connection discussing with each other, and they can unite and raise money to get better lawyer, or they can unite to pressure the healthcare authority to get better a range of healthcare resources, to put their life into a higher priority to save those people from infection. So the impact of this case is that the practical impact is that at least the health priority will be arranged towards the minority, will be arranged towards the underprivileged people next time, even if this time people will not make the healthcare authority will not make big changes as our opponent mentioned, but at least the worst case scenario of our case is that the healthcare authority is being pressured, and it will care more about the underprivileged person. However, this is part of the practical impact. We got our principal impact saying that the government has the duty, the government has the responsibility to care about its person. So it is justified for the family to sue the healthcare authority for its mistake of negligence, for its mistake of taking underprivileged people's life under a lower priority. So that's all for my speech. Thank you for listening.
We think that it is quite unfair for a side proposition to come up here and say that these national health authorities will somehow be very omnipotent entities which knows how to immediately solve the issue of the healthcare system, and how to immediately solve the viruses that are currently going on in the outbreak. And that's why I'm so proud to propose today. So I mean, first of all, recharacterize a few things. Right? First of all, they claim that national health authorities have like all these resources and have these resources and the money to actually invest into helping these poor people, which I'll get later into my rebuttals on how this is actually untrue, and that they can solve these issues immediately. However, first of all, they never actually clarified what it means for these national health authorities to have those resources. And secondly, right, even if they do somehow clarify that, let me just say that these outbreaks in the first place are very unique viruses, right? It's outbreaking for a reason. It's because doctors don't have the current medical treatment for them to actually treat the patients. And when the private sectors can't find a solution and the government can't find a solution, that's when outbreak happens, right? Because because you don't actually know what's going on and you don't know the solution. That's why they're trying to invest in it in the first place. And that's the reason why most of the high death rates that are happening in outbreak diseases are during the initial phase, because people don't exactly know how to deal with it. And national health authorities aren't doctors in the first place either, right? They're not down there helping people on the ground, right? They're people who are making policies. They're people who are crowd controlling the people to ensure that the virus doesn't spread any more than it actually does. And for you to actually go blame these people who are and be able to effectively, I don't even know what that means, to help these poor people in the first place, it's quite unfair of them, right? So secondly, then they come up here and bring the point, their whole case about the fact that we need to empower the poor people because these government are focusing on the rich. However, let me just point this out, right? Why exactly would the rich people go to the government when they have their own private doctors who sometimes, more often than not, have more resources and have more money than the government itself for them to actually treat the diseases, right? So obviously the government's not going to help the rich people because they don't need their help. So what this means now is that you're going to focus on the general public, specifically the poor people too, right? So now their entire point of helping the poor and their entire point about like empowering them entirely comes down, right? However, secondly, they also said that like these people can win in court, right? And that they can get the resources available for them to create discussions about the government on how they should treat the diseases, which first of all, no, right? Discussions are not going to have about how to treat the diseases. As they've already said, right? Media is going to come out and spread about emotional stories about why these people are going to talk about, oh, my son died due to this outbreak of the disease. But yeah, that's just that, right? That's just the extent. People die. So what? You're not giving any solution to how you're gonna solve any other people who are dying further, right? So what's gonna happen then is the media and the people are gonna perpetuate the narrative, that emotional stories about people dying, instead of actually finding the solution to the issues in the first place. So now what the discussion is gonna lead to then is people blaming the government about, like, hey, why are you doing this? Hey, why are you doing that? We see these people dying out here, and they're gonna spread out emotional stories instead of giving actual constructive criticism on how they should, improve the people. Like, for example, have better crowd management control, have better, like, policies. Like, for example, during COVID, they bring out like the 2 meters apart policy, right? So I don't see how these discussions is going to lead to them solving the issue itself. It's actually going to divert them to even less important issues, which actually solve the problem, which my second speaker will get later into the topic. So now let me go ahead and recharacterize the state. Then the state can manage. The state is not some omnipotent being who can, like, essentially solve every problems immediately when they see it. They obviously need time, and they obviously need money, and they obviously need the time to actually research about these medicines and to understand the disease itself. So then this leads to my first argument, which is that national health authorities doesn't include any don't actually do any direct healthcare. What I mean by this is that as already asked stated before, these national health authorities actually don't tend to people directly as like doctors do. They instead focus on crowd control measures. They instead focus on policies which reduce the spread of the disease. And the mechanism behind this is that they alternatively help people instead of actually helping them in the first place. So what this means now is then that, like, obviously they don't know immediately what to do, and the state isn't at fault at this. And I'm not saying that the people who died are also at fault with this. No one is at fault here. But if you were to enact this policy here, right, you are diverting the people's attention away from the root of the issue, and for them to actually focus on some emotional stories instead of actually solving the problem. So on my second argument then, on how by nature of the outbreak, it is expected that the government resources cannot be expected to be enough in the early stages. Key emphasis on that, because right now, right, as I already said before, in the early stages, government obviously, sure, they might have other resources, as proposition has claimed, which they haven't, which is an assertion they made, and they haven't even explained what those resources are. And even if they do have enough resources, right, they still need to, like, invest into time and invest into healthcare, and they still need to make policies which are actually effective. Obviously, they're gonna make mistakes along the way, but that's just a part of the process, right? That's part of the process where they make actually good policies, and that's a part of the process when they actually solve the root of the issue itself. So the mechanic behind this is that, okay, yeah, sure, people die from the diseases, right? However, that is out of the state's control, because obviously they're trying their best to help these people in the first place. And for these people to actually blame these states, it's quite unjust of them, right? Because the state is obviously trying their best to help these people. It's not like they're tending to the rich, as side proposition claims them to be. They're actually trying to actively help these people. Yes.
When we are talking about negligence, you do not need to prove that you have the incentive. You only need to prove that you have the obligation to help.
Yes, because they obviously have the obligation to help, right? And they are trying to help them, right? That's how COVID actually got solved, because people are focusing on the issues and they're focusing on the research papers on how they're actually going to solve that issue in the first place. People don't go right out on the streets about how government aren't helping COVID. No, they're talking about how should we solve COVID. And that's when discussions happen. That's when doctors get together. And that's when they actually find a solution to the problem, instead of you blaming on emotional stories and attachments, which don't even help the people in the long run in the first place. That leads into my third argument on how this is ineffective and this does not help any of solve the issues. So first of all, diseases are outbreaks, right? As I've already told you before, it is quite uncontrollable and quite unpredictable. And obviously people die in the early stages because because the state doesn't have enough resource to help these people in the first place. So you know what? Sure, let's take them with the base case. Even if the state somehow is failed these people and it's within their obligation for them to protect them in the first place, right? Even if you still come and blame them, and as I said before, when they win court, when they gave this whole mechanism and argument about people winning court trials and making the state paying them in compensation for like money or some other resources for them to actually help the family itself. You know what this is going to lead to? This is going to lead to even more people asking the state for money and diverting resources from them to actually invest into research medical care, for them to research about policies to help reduce the spread of the disease, policies for them to reduce the number of people who enter hospitals every single day during the early stage of the outbreak disease. So now what this means, that the impact of this argument is that the resources get diverted into the wrong direction. People are going to keep dying. And yeah, sure, they're going to keep dying, but you're going to keep spreading emotional stories. And that's not going to solve the real issue, which is that people are dying. And that you're not focusing on how you're actually going to solve it. You're focusing on the fact that people are dying, and that's about it. So, and then thirdly, right, you actually control the disease, which is more effective, by the way, because you're now looking at the sorry.
I cannot blame the opposition for thinking that national authorities do not know how to immediately cure these viruses. But however, I think if they actually listen to what our first speaker have said, I think that they wouldn't have said this point. Why? Because they do not understand that yes, in the status quo, the national authorities do really not know how to immediately cure these viruses. But that is because they do not have this like policies to like have more to acquire more resources from the rich people, for example, money, so that they can hire like better tech, so that they can hire better doctors and then like buy better technology to innovate better medicine to like solve these problems. And even if yes, they do not have the immediate solution to these viruses, but like how do they treat the rich people? They treat them by like using these medicine that they already have to let them like slow down the effect. So why should these medicine only be available to the rich people, right? I think that they should also be available to the poor people and the underprivileged people. And I think that is exactly how like our side will solve it. They say that the rich people will not go to the government to solve these problems because they have private doctors, and then that means that the public hospitals will only have these poor people as patients. But I think that is like a complete speculation. And when we say about rich people, we mean the upper class. We do not mean the billionaires who have the money to hire private doctors and hire private hospitals to innovate new technology and new medicines to treat themselves. That's not exactly what they look like, right? I think that's incorrect. They ask what are the resources that the government have to like to solve these problems, right? I think that our first speaker has already like explained this, but in case you have not really listened, I think I should like explain it once again. It's not that they do not have enough resources. Prioritization of the resources are incorrect. They should like the entire reason why there is death is because they prioritize all of the resources to the rich people. Every one rich person who has died, that means that like there are 100 or even 1,000 poor people who have died because they are unable to treat them with the resources. People, yes, what's your POI?
Please explain to me how poor people are supposed to sue the government because like they can't afford a lawyer.
Yes, our first speaker has also explained that. Please listen carefully. But just in case you haven't listened to that, I'll say that again. The CJS system is not completely fair, but it is much fairer than the government. And this is what we wanted to say. Because first, authorities, which what our like first speaker has said, and second, because like there's like the judge and like the jury, right? So what does the judge look like? The judge cares for their reputation. And why do the judge care for their reputation? They could have stayed as a lawyer, and the lawyer and the judge, they have like similar income, right? But why do they want to become a judge? Because they have a higher social status, and higher social status is completely linked with reputation. There's not going to be as much corruption in the CJS system because they are unable to corrupt the judge, unable to corrupt the jury, and because the jury is randomly chosen, and the judge like they care for reputation. And even if the judge, they do not exactly care for reputation, and there's going to be rich people who will pay money to the judge to like allow for a lighter sentence or such. Think about this. When there's a huge major outbreak of infectious disease, is there only going to be one person who is going to die from this? No, there's going to be multiple people who will die from this infectious disease, and that means that there's going to be multiple people who will go to the court to sue these like national health authorities, which also the opposition sides like agrees on, right? So like if there's not going to be only one person who dies from this disease, that means that the judge, they're unable to like be corrupted every time, because like it's going to be very obvious that every time the verdict is not like how it should be. So at least the CJS system is less corrupt than the government. And I will add one more mechanism on why allowing such lawsuits can incentivize national health authorities to be more diligent, transparent, and responsive. Because of the media, right? The media, like I will analyze this from a different perspective than my first speaker. So the media, what do they look like? They have the incentive to gain more users. For example, most users are poor people. I'll just give an example, such as the like Kuaishou platform in China. They want to have a larger user base, and they want to have like a larger follower base to make more money. So they will report this case in the favor of the underrepresented people. This means that it will be like the rich people abuse power once again and use connections to win the lawsuit. This means that the privileged people have a lesser incentive to get into this lawsuit in the first place, which means that because like it's going to be very complicated, and it will waste a lot of their time, and they might not even win this lawsuit. So and even if they win this lawsuit, there's going to be like a reputation problem, right? And then they're like and then the politicians, they do not want to get into this lawsuit, because if there is going to be such media reports, then like then like their boss will like just fire them, and then they will like lose this social status, and they do not want that, even if they like lose some money, right? Okay, like on this point, the opposition side also said that like many people, there's going to be lots of people who are going to abuse this power and then sue national health authorities to a very high extent. I think that first, that's not going to be very true, right? Because they know that they are unable to win every single lawsuit that they raise, and second, there's going to be a cap, right? Because like not everybody is going to be able to even if there's going to be lots of people who are going to abuse this power, there's not enough like judges, and there's not enough time for them to like for every single lawsuit to pass through, right? So that is one part of the problem. Second is that even if they really is going to be this abuse of power, even if there's going to be lots of money that from the government that will be given to these poor families, I think that is still a good thing, because like you cannot weigh one's life with money, right? It like this one person's life, it doesn't really matter if you like pay $1,000 or you pay $10,000 to compensate, right? Because you cannot weigh this one life with money. Okay, so that is all for my speech. Thank you, and so proud to propose. Thank you.
The proposition's argument about suing and somehow that leading to the diverging of resources from apparently the rich to the poor is an absolute stretch of an argument, and there is no mechanism backing up the distance from just suing the government, suing the health institutes, for some reason diverting the money from the rich to the poor, because how are those things extremely connected? The health ministry does not do taxes. That's the job of the tax ministry. Now, let's say even if that's true, right? Let's say even if they have the ability to do that, why is that ineffective in most countries, as in developing countries and in contexts that the proposition refuses to engage with because they know their policy is ineffective? So let me actually picture how suing works in their world first, all right? So let's say your family members die after they get infected with an infectious disease. I'll just use COVID for the sake of like, fast of tongue, right? By a virus, right? By a virus. Then they die. You know what happens? They go sue the government, right? But when usually you sue the government, let's say you have a state-funded lawyer, right? Like a state defendant. You're given a lawyer, right? What usually happens is, instead of a verdict happening, right, to like solve like the entire system that they claimed, most of the time it's a settlement, right? It's an out-of-court settlement that does nothing but waste resources of the health ministry itself, right? By the way, health ministries also have their own lawyers, so they're very unlikely to just lose the case outright. Now, let's say even if they do lose the case, and then what happens after that, right? Their diverting resources works as intended, that the rich gets taxed and whatever that happens after. Okay, so what happens when the rich gets taxed and when diverging resources happens? It doesn't solve anything for 3 reasons. One, okay, let's just imagine this in the context of a developing nation, right? Which is most of the world, by the way, right? Because first world nations, right, developed nations usually already have the resources they require to develop their own vaccines, right? The top pharmaceutical companies are already there, so there's no point in them actually like doing all this. Even okay, so let's go to developing nations, which is the context that will apply to the most because they have the most poor people, right? One, they get resources, they get their resources. Now what's next, right? They try to develop the virus, but oh no, what's this? They don't have the technical expertise to do so. They don't have the medical expertise to do so because they're still developing. They don't have any good pharmaceutical companies. So what's after that? They can't do anything. They literally just have the resources pooled there just to do nothing, right? And even if they can do something, they can like buy like, you know, maybe vaccines from elsewhere, but the increase in like the efficiency, right, it's marginal. It's completely marginal. It does nothing. And two, the proposition assumes that there's an infinite number of doctors. There's an infinite number of healthcare workers that governments can suddenly like summon in order to solve all their problems, fix everything, right? Which is just impossible. It takes like 6 years to graduate as a doctor, and like there's like there's a lot of ratios between doctor and patients, especially when doctors are not trained specifically for this disease, which is extremely dangerous. Also, doctors are the one who's also risking their lives, their livelihood, right? Because, you know, they can get disease and die themselves, right? Healthcare workers included, government healthcare workers included, because they have to go through crowd management and stuff, right? That's an element of safety they do not consider, right? Not only that, right? And they've said that, oh, there's already a cure for the rich, which is like, I don't understand. Just because you're rich doesn't mean you have an access to a cure. That's for literally a new disease that no one is able to stop, like, already. And so, like, this argument just does not make sense, right? So, in this case, where, right, where the media, right? Let's talk about the media, for example, right? When these suing stories happen, right? Okay, let's compare worlds real quick, right? On opposition's world, the media, what the media will look like in our world is that they will most likely talk about how like the government success, right? Talk about how like campaigning on how to like, you know, solve this problem, seeing death rates either increase or decrease every day, which is just the truth, right? That will happen on both sides. But on your world, the media is more focused on the patients themselves, are more focused on the patients that are, you know, suing for like quite literally no reason and getting like and showing these emotional stories that like shows the failure of the state. This decreases trust in the state. Therefore, this makes the state solves the problem even worse on your side, making the problem slowing down the problem solving, right? Now, what does this cause, right? This causes what they fear, right? This causes the middle class people and like some people who can fork out the money to hire like private doctors or something, subtracting from the national health pool, national healthcare like pool of doctors, right? Making treatment worse on their world, right? So what has our side brought to this debate? What our side brought to this debate is that this disease is just uncontrollable, right? The government's claim that this disease is controllable just from the get-go if resource management was better and if people just start suing the government is just, it's actually untrue, right? Even this COVID, take COVID for example, right? Even the first world countries, right? Even countries in Europe, even countries like North America, for example, like America and like even Canada, right? They struggle to deal with this new disease, even with all the resources they have, because, you know, by nature of being in developed countries, right? So we do not understand what like benefit does suing the health minister actually does directly lead to this, because as I've said, at most you get a settlement. Any POIs before protected time starts? Okay, I'm assuming no. So finally, all right, let's just talk about the comparative and why our case is better overall and why we should win this debate. So we propose that suing is ineffective. We propose that national healthcare authorities will take like resources, right? Like that just contributes barely anything, right? Let's compare best case and worst case, right? On your best case is that national healthcare gets attention from the media, unwanted attention, like sob stories, and like they get sued like all the time for emotional damages that are caused by very subjective circumstances, because healthcare isn't just like a big umbrella term, right? You know, government literally ask any doctor in the world, right? Ask any health institution in the world. They cannot claim that they can literally fix any issue if they have enough resources, because of the fact that human health works in an extremely subjective way. They work in a way that is really dependent on each cases, and it is like unreasonable that the government can claim that they can fix all these problems just by diverging resources. Now, that's the fact about the justification that because they have a duty to save people, they can't they can be sued, right? Basically, like the principle that they should be sued on, right? This principle is just unjustified, right? The government is like anything that happens to the patients is almost out of government control, right? Everything right there, except for like what kind of government can do here is crowd control, management, and like campaigns promoting health, right? They can allocate doctors, they can allocate resources, but in the end, it's up to the individual cases of how severe that case is, right? They can't speed up disease, they can't speed up making like pills anyways, because they in developing nations don't have the resources. And therefore, just because of all that reason, we win this debate handily, because the government cannot propose anything to solve anything. Thank you so much. Proud to oppose.
In my speech, I'll first give the main clash of this debate and then move on to weighing and why our side of the House win this debate. So first, about government's accountability. Why do we think so many people die in disease outbreaks? Because we think that government has no accountability for non-privileged citizens, because the government is influenced by power structures like political lobbying, like corruption. And for example, during the COVID times, privileged are prioritized because family, like for example, family members of people who work in hospitals, like collect connections of government officials, they receive it's not like when OP say that the OP make the disease as something that is so inevitable and people can do nothing about them. Well, we tell them that when the doctors first find a new cure or the best cure right now, even if it doesn't cure everything about you on that disease, when they do figure out the best cure right now that they have, they will prioritize to give those medics to privileged people. And then so they will give what they have the best right now in this status quo to the privileged people and treatments and medics. So like for example, lockdown is a very good example. People lockdown basically is just people in one city infecting each other, and then that also means that they don't infect people out of the city. They have a lesser of chance. So but however, that also means increasing the death rate within the city itself, and then that is a form of prioritization because people outside of the city can have a lower chance of being infected when people inside the city have a larger chance. And what does prioritization look like? We think that we don't think there's any fair reason for prioritization because there always could be better alternatives and authorities could have done better. You can't justify sacrificing people in the lockdown cities for those who are under heavy protection because life cannot be weighed. And again, government could have invested more in medical care. They could, but they did not. They chose to lock down. So the privileged is separated from underprivileged citizens and the poor. And so what they could have done by like allocating resources or investing more in medical care, we think that like opposition are ignoring what the capacity of government and what they could have done. And also opposition argue that government government don't have enough money or they like don't know what to deal with the situation. We're not first of all, we're not expecting the government to know what to do at instance, like work out a perfect plan but we think that they could have done better than in allocating resources and in like lessening privilege. And it is not and we think no, it's not about government being unable to solve the problems. So again, it's about that we think they do have the capacity. They do have a capacity to gather more doctors and invest more in Medicares, but that right now in the status quo, there's an unequal distribution of resource. So think about like if you argue that they don't have enough resource, well, like why does the privileged have so much money to hire private doctors in the first place? Then think about it, because while like underprivileged people can't even get into a hospital, it's because the government are not having heavy tax on them, and then they can like they can escape from the lockdown cities to somewhere safe and sound, and they can hire private doctors, make sure that they never get infected. And then look at like the extravagant government buildings, right? And governors riding in luxurious cars, and they're always in like under safe protection, and then they can always get in hospitals earlier. And then is that really like a better way to spend their budgets than to spend them on medical investments? And also, we think that families are justified to sue national health authorities because negligence means that it's not on purpose. The acts that harms others are that are done is not on purpose. So we don't think that we don't blame the government for not having a perfect plan like instantly after the outbreak. We just think that it is justified to sue in negligence because we know that the government, okay, maybe they're not doing it on purpose, but there's no need of a reason to sue for negligence because we are aware that the government is not doing this on purpose. And then also like, for example, if a parent accidentally like kills their children, they have to go to jail, right? According to law. And then that's because even if we know the parent didn't want to do this intentionally and they love their children, but they have the right to care for their children. And then because they're the only person that is responsible for them. And that is the relationship, like government and their citizens. Government is the only person who can help the citizens with medical care, and they're the only person who can be responsible for their citizens. So we think that government bears the obligation, because only the government is able to invest in medical resources, and only they're able to help decrease the death rate of the citizens. And what is the relationship between government and citizens? They're not strangers, but their relationship is that the government made a commitment to care for all their people. And so clarification, so again, we're not asking for the authorities to know what to do instantly. We just want a better solution, and we want a more equal distribution of resources, and we want less underprivileged people to suffer. And also, moving on to the effectiveness of this sue. So we think that there are many wrong characterizations on the opposition side. We think, again, like layers of analysis, judge, they are there to ensure justice, so they eliminate bias, and then they follow the law or they lose their job, and then they care for their reputation, so they're unlikely to be really biased and then like towards the privileged people if underprivileged and privileged people are on the court. And again, jury, they're chosen at random. Also, they're normal people, which means that they easily can empathize with people whose like family member died. Even if you say, yeah, a lot of people die in outbreaks, but they're still normal people. They can be easily influenced by emotional. And also, CGS system have check and balances in the system, and also I'm not going to further go into the media because that's already going through. And also we think that even if like opposition side claim that there can be out of court settlements, we think that at least people on our side get money, and that's better than getting nothing in ops world. Then like even if your family member dies and you go on court, you get nothing. We think our world is better than ops world, even in our worst case of out court settlement. And also, so for impacts, we're fighting for a better arrangement of resource. We want to gather doctors for a more efficient cure, and we have more immediate research and development on our side. So for all reasons above, proud to propose.
I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. What their side is doing is that they only worsen the problem because there's less resources, and I'll get into that later in the clashes. And then they also don't provide any mechanism for when they say they want us, they're going to solve the solution a lot better. And then they also blame the wrong people, like the authorities for the national health authorities aren't in the wrong to blame. Now, I have two clashes here. The first clash is which side will solve the problem faster? And the second clash is, should we blame national health authorities? So now on the first clash, which side will solve the problem faster? Obviously, both sides has agreed that an outbreak, people still don't know a lot about it, right? It's in the early stages, it's really unstoppable, and there are, of course, going to be deaths. So you have to deal with that. Now, when on their side, they keep suing, this doesn't improve the understanding of other people. You're just saying that, oh, bro, this person died, this person in my close family died, we should go riot and we should go sue them. But this isn't improving understanding on solving the actual problem. So, and also it doesn't improve the quality of solving problem. Like my first and second speaker said, it also doesn't improve like anything. It's just saying people that, oh, my grandma died, my blah blah died. And also, by the way, if the people sue, the hospital or this healthcare have to provide the resources to get lawyers and get resources to defend against their case. So you're taking away the resources from the patients and spending it on lawyers to protect your case. And there's no engagement on this. They haven't even engaged in this. And then they said, well, we have this, that if the people win, we will solve structural inequality or some sort. But the resources to help the people will go somewhere else, so you're not actually solving the problem. And also, structural inequality isn't even the point of this debate. It's not even the core of this debate. This debate is about how we can better improve national healthcare. Now, I'm gonna go into their argument about the structural inequality that doesn't matter. Now, the core of this debate, right, is about solving these infectious disease and how fast we can go solve it. And let's assume that, well, they can try to solve a structural inequality and the poor people will win. They still can't solve it because just a little bit of, let's say, the poor people get more resources. How is that going to solve structural inequality, right? And if they win on this one, right, it doesn't matter into the debate anyways. And then they say comparative with the parents having killing their child, but they don't want actually to kill their child. But do one parent have 1 million killed children? They can't. If you compare one parent with a few children, with the whole hospital or the whole healthcare having 1 million people to take care of in an infectious disease that they can't even control, they don't even know how to solve it in the first place. Now, the second clash, should we blame the national healthcare authorities? The healthcare authorities, what do? Firstly, they take care of the people's health, and this is not direct. They're not giving the pills to the people, so they shouldn't be blamed for. Now, what do they actually do? They manage the hospital, they regulate the hospital, they control the spread of disease, and they have this information campaign to tell people what to do. And they also provide resources, provide care to the people. So of course they're trying their best. And national health authorities are not doctors. They do policy making, they do management, not tending the patients. The doctor tend the patients. So you can blame the doctors, right? But again, it's not the point of this debate. And also the doctors you see are trying their best to solve this problem. So what have we achieved in this debate? We already achieved that the national health authorities, we shouldn't blame them because they're not doing the thing as approved before. And what do they do then? What do the government side do then? They keep saying they want to solve the problem, but they don't provide actual mechanism on how to solve the problem. Our side, we're defending a status quo, which is much better, because on their side, they're slowing down the process of finding the right solutions to the infectious disease. What they're doing is that they're only telling the the health authorities to please help, please, you neglect my daughter, your patient, and so I'm gonna sue you, just because the doctors don't know the solution yet to solving the problem. So in this debate, we've won over the first two clashes, right? On our side, it's a lot more effective. On their side, why would they try to sue these people when it doesn't do anything? It's very ineffective, and they're solving the wrong problem. And their whole argument about structural inequality, that doesn't matter. If they win that, it still doesn't matter. So overall, let's compare the two worlds. On our side, we help the people more, and we actually solve the problem. We try to focus more on the problem and not more on the people that side, because we do on that as well, right? We're not allowing people to sue on the health authorities to steal the resources from the lawyers. On their side, what they're doing is only slowing down the problem and worsening the problem and stealing the resources from the people who actually need the help. So you can see here that we've already won this debate from first, second, and third speaker, and their side is not dreaming. Therefore, I'm proud to propose.
Okay, so basically this debate boils down to, okay, does diverting resources work? And is the government truly negligent, right? This just boils down to that, to two clashes. Should the government be blamed for negligence? And does this actually solve inequality or whatever the proposition brought? Well, First off, this debate is created in the first place to issue the problem that, hey, is the government doing its job as a healthcare institute? Is the government protecting the citizens from this unknown virus that no one has been able to control before? What proposition gave you is that proposition came up here and said, yeah, we can control that. Just tax the rich and then sue the government. Then somehow they will be able to control this disease perfectly, like somehow, right? One, as stated by my first and second and third speaker, they provide no clear mechanism on how it will actually work. Besides the fact that suing them will somehow cause funds to be diverted from the rich, like we do not see a clear mechanism on that, and they already lost this point. Now, let's say that do work, right? Let's say that does work. They can sue, they can take money from the rich, and they can somehow, make their healthcare system better. But as I already stated, that the healthcare system is already at its limits, right? During in pandemic, I think as we explained like pretty clearly in first speaker, the system is super stretched already, right? The system is as stretched as it could be because of influx of new patients that basically just is unstoppable floodgate, right? So we told you that suing does nothing but slow down the healthcare system. Suing does nothing but giving settlements to the people who their loved one dies. Sure, the settlement, yeah, it's assuring, right? Like this is their best case, by the way. The only thing that comes from the proposition at their best case is that the people who's suing the government gets a settlement and to like replace their income or whatever, right? But all these harms stacked on their side, such as slowing down the healthcare system, diverting media attention instead of PRing about how to actually solve this problem and how to stay as a nation together to help go through this disaster, instead on sob stories of government neglect that isn't even controllable in the first place. I think the opposition has given you sufficient analysis and characterization on all stakeholders in the government, the patients, and the pandemic itself and the health outbreak, right? In conclusion, so to conclude this debate, let me just give you this take, right? This is basically cold take and why we win this debate. Would you rather have the ability to just sue the government, like the proposition proposing the ability to sue the government just to do nothing about it, right? They sue the government, they get settlement, they get happy personally, but nothing gets solved, nothing gets done. The system isn't changed. People are still dying. People sue the government. This thing loops happen again, as explained by my second speaker and my third speaker. But now, what do we propose you? We keep the status quo, right? And this is not bringing new material, by the way. This is explained in terms of the max in the system in second, right? As there's a healthcare system created, right? As everyone in this debate already knows, the healthcare system is created to help the civilians, right? To help the people who are already suffering, right? And there's systems put in place for that, right? Systems put in place, every side agreeing on that exists, right? And so just suing them just makes that system slower and does nothing good positive to this debate. On both of the clashes, right? We win the clash clearly of is suing justified or not by way that it is uncontrollable. The disease is just uncontrollable. And the other clash is even if we lose or even if we win, all right, it does basically just adds nothing to the debate, right? To be charitable to the opposition, of course, about the solving inequality, because this debate is about healthcare, not about inequality. And even if it is about inequality, we win this clash anyway. Thank you so much, Pao, to oppose.
We both agree that this debate ultimately fall into two clashes. The first one is about whether government have enough capacity to do so. So our opponent said government resources is not enough, but the only mechanism they gave is that resources itself is limited. But we both know that resources on Earth is limited. But just as the example of food is that the food in the world can actually feed anyone, but the reason why there are people hunger to death is the government do not have a well distribution of that resources. So it is the same for healthcare resources that our fourth speaker and second speaker and third speaker both explain in structural mechanisms of why government do not do the good attribution of resources. The government people, the government official, they are sitting in their SUV cars and splendid offices of government officials, but they do not even sell this kind of things to gather more resources for the poor people to actually have good doctors. We do not say that why our opponents just can assume us that do not give structural mechanisms to it. And they also mentioned that government have the incentive to solve the issue, but this incentive is an assertion. They do not explain why the government have the incentive to actually do this, but we're not asserting. We're like giving you mechanisms of why the government cannot why the government do not have the incentive to solve the issue, because it is far more easy for them to use some medias and cover the issues and just let some poor people die, because the poor people do not have these resources and do not have the ability that they do not give them to sue the government. The poor people will not sue, and they assume the poor people will not win, and then they can like just easily cover up the issue. So you can see that it is on their side of the case that people cannot gain the resources, that people cannot get the right that you want to get. Just to clarify, we're not like arguing about the structural inequality of the poor and rich. We're just voicing out. We're just earning more awareness for those people to get more fair allocations of resources. At least they can get to the higher priorities. At least they can get better resources in the next time. And we need to have those people to be united together to actually solve the issue. We need these people to unite together on social media. We have the mechanism of social media, the social movements, the jury, and also the judge too. All these 4 mechanisms to prove you why we are likely to win the case. But our opponent don't listen to even one of them. We have already proved you that why the problem can be solved, about why the attention can be gained. It's not about only the sad story distracting the media's attention. It's about people uniting together and voicing out the inequality, of voicing out that they are not actually getting the fair distribution of resources. We're pressuring the healthcare authority to actually give the poor people more resources, at least like sell their splendid buildings and sell these cars. At least we do not want those officials can do nothing but get more healthcare resources than those underprivileged people. We at least solve this kind of problem. They said that our worst case is we got settlement outside of the court, but at least we got that settlement. But on their side of the case, the poor people got nothing. And it's on their side of the case when people do not have the right to sue, when people do not allowed to sue, that these are the cases that governments can be very easily just cover up the issues. So in our side of the case, we prove you that the government does have the capacity to do so. At least they can just allocate their resources. It is something that they can do. And also the problem can be solved on our side of the case because we have proved you the 4 mechanisms of why they are likely to win the journey, and the mechanism of social media about how attention are being gained. But on their best cases, people are not solved. Nothing are gonna change. So they're like just wasting people's life, risking people's life of changing nothing. So that is why we win this debate.